Republican State Representative David Spiller of Jacksboro, thank you so much, and welcome back to Eye on Politics.
Thanks, Jack. I appreciate the opportunity.
So you were the lead sponsor on Senate Bill 8 in that Texas House. This bill is now passed and it's heading over to Governor Abbott's desk.
Correct.
And this is going to require the sheriff's departments that operate county jails throughout the state to sign up for one of the three 287G programs with ICE.
Correct.
Tell me about how this is going to work and what it's actually going to do. What's the goal here?
Well, the second question first. What it's going to do is it's going to allow all Texas sheriffs and counties within the state that operate a jail or contract for the operation of a jail to cooperate with our federal partners, cooperate with ICE to, and our focus has been primarily the in-jail model. People that are already arrested on other charges, we're just asking them to be able to identify the folks that are there, that are arrested, to see if they have ICE warrants, to see if they have detainers, to see if they have warrants for removal, and to participate in that federal database to identify those folks so they're not inadvertently bonded out and released on the street to commit other offenses and crimes.
And so, I'm just curious about these folks who are coming into the jail will now have to be identified.
Right.
Those in the jails, will they have to be identified too if the sheriff's department is already not part of this program?
Well, first of all, they could participate in this program right now. Right now, it's voluntary.
Right.
And
this
you can
would
choose,
mandate it.
Right. And this bill, SB 8, would mandate it. And so, yes, and presumably it's done at bookend when someone's booked into a jail, and they are trained. If you operate under the warrant service model, the least intrusive of any of those, and the one that honestly that we in the House had encouraged, and what I still would encourage, that's the easiest to do. The training is minimal. They come to you and train in one day, so the cost is minimal. In fact, they're even ICE is working toward doing just an online training to be able to identify people, log into their database, do that thing, and then once they're identified, you contact ICE, let them know about it, that there's an ICE detainer or something there on these folks, and that ICE would come and pick them up within 48 hours. They've got 48 hours to pick them up.
Now, do they have, in some cases, if they're charged with serious crimes, aren't they going to stay and face, prosecution before being deported?
It depends. That's a prosecutor's, choice, election to do that or not. ICE can come pick them up. Sometimes there's some coordination between prosecutors and what ICE would do, but generally, it depends what the charge is. If those folks, I would suspect, if what they have against them is an actual removal warrant, that not just a detainer to say that they may have violated some of the process, but actually they're there on other crimes and there is a warrant for their removal under federal law, those folks would probably be picked up and removed from our country. Those that have other charges, they may remain in jail, and you would wait until you have a final disposition of those criminal cases if they have criminal cases pending. But those people are going to be there, and they're going to go through that process regardless if they have an ICE detainer on them or not.
I know you said there are sheriff's departments across the state that are already taking part of this program. Some are involved in all three of these programs.
True.
And I know this covers 234 of the 254 would be required. What about these other 20?
You have some counties like Loving County and some others that just don't operate a jail. They contract with other people around them, or they take, if they have someone that hopefully they don't have too many folks that violate the law in Loving County, but if they did, I'm sure that there's a contiguous county that they would take folks to. So we have some counties that are either so small or don't have a jail that meets jail standards criteria that operates, and they deal with other counties. So those folks would be exempt.
Okay.
But by the same token, if someone is arrested in that county and they're taken to a jail, then they're taken to a jail that would be required to do the same thing. So nonetheless, those folks would be picked up.
You've called this a public safety bill.
I believe it is, absolutely.
Why?
Well, because the concern here is that, last session we focused on border security. We're still focusing on border security, but with President Trump in office and the fact that Texas is cooperating and has been cooperating through Operation Lone Star and other efforts, cooperating with ICE and Border Patrol, we continue to do that, but the focus now is to address what has happened primarily over the last 4 years and the unprecedented number of illegal aliens that have come across that either are convicted felons, rapists, murderers, child molesters, things like that, that have come into our community, terrorists that have come into our community, and they are among us, and they are picked up on other charges sometimes. We need to identify those people. We need to know if they have those other charges. We need to know what their criminal history is. And unfortunately, we have some counties, some larger, that choose to turn a blind eye. They probably suspect that they may have warrants and other things there, but they choose not to check it. What we're asking them to do is to do their job respectfully and check and cooperate with our federal partners to make sure that we identify the folks that are a public safety threat to us. That's the focus of SBA.
You mentioned President Trump, and Democrats have criticized this. They didn't vote for this, and they have said that basically they believe this is just a messaging bill to please President Trump. What do you say to that?
Well, no, this is very much needed, and I've been working on this with other stakeholders for the past year and a half before President Trump was ever elected back into office. It's something that we absolutely have to do to cooperate with our federal partners, and it's needed as a public safety concern. Yes, SB 8 is an illegal immigration bill to the extent that we're dealing with that issue, but first and foremost, it's a public safety bill.
And the State Representative Ramon Romero Jr. of Fort Worth, he's also the chairman of the Mexican American Legislative Committee, and he said that immigrant families, public safety, and local budgets are going to suffer under this. My question to you on that is, are there funds in this bill or to help the sheriff's departments comply, or is this another one of the state's unfunded mandates?
We put funding in this bill, and originally when the bill came from the Senate, I did a complete, and worked with stakeholders, including Representative Romero, sat down at a table with him and listened to concerns, and we tried to craft a bill to address those concerns. And so what we did, we tried to focus on the warrant service model, although sheriffs can pick any one or more of the three. They could do that under the previous bill. They can do that under the bill as it exists now. But we also put some funding in there. And what the House did, we had a component where we had a grant program in there, and we also had a reimbursement program on the back end in case some expenses, unexpected expenses exceeded what they thought would happen. So through the Senate rejected that, but we came back, and so the funding that we had, the entirety of the funding was about $20 million. What we did, we front-loaded all of that into a grant program. We eliminated the reimbursement program, and we put all that into a grant program. So every county that complies will get those grant funding based on the size and population of their county. So, which would include Tarrant County, include Dallas County, include every county, that they would have funding. So we thought we would incentivize that and provide that funding to address those concerns. There's also, my understanding, some grant funding in the 287G program at the federal level, which I don't have anything to do with, but there shouldn't be additional cost. But back to this point about affecting families, I don't believe it does, because if a sheriff says, we just want to operate out of the warrant service model or even the jail enforcement model, both of those models, two of the three, are exclusively operated within the jail. So we're not going out on the street, arresting people, doing anything like, that's not what this is. This is people that are in jail on other criminal offenses already, and we're just checking to see if they match in the federal database. I don't see anything disruptive about that. We need to know folks that are in our jails if they've committed other crimes.
Does this bill allow law enforcement to ask someone out on the streets what their status is? Or does that go back to previous legislation?
Right. They have the right to do that anyway under our existing under our existing state law. That's in the Code of Criminal Procedure. They actually have that ability. Whether they do that or not is a different story. But this bill, number one, this bill is not going to address any of that if someone opts in on the warrant service model or the jail enforcement model. It's only if they opt into the task force model, which is much more involved, requires much more training, much more cost. We're not necessarily pushing that at all. I'd rather it be, the push is and has been to participate in the warrant service model, the in-jail model only. But if a county chooses to do that, and if a sheriff chooses to do that and incur that expense and do those things, yes, they could go out in the community and they're trained to identify and do those type of things. That's not really the focus of this bill.
And my last question is another concern, and that is, some are saying, critics are saying, this is going to basically allow people to racially profile. And I'm wondering, what do you say to that? Because that's a concern that people still have.
Okay, but this bill doesn't have anything to do with race. It has to do if they're arrested on a
So everybody
criminal charge.
gets checked.
Everybody. I mean,
Okay.
I wouldn't even know which race to start with because everybody is checked, and you check in the federal database to see if those people have committed a crime or if they have federal warrants out on them. You would think that we're doing that anyway. And some counties will say, look, we do this anyway, we just don't participate in this program. Well, why don't we participate in the program, get everybody on the same page here? And so this doesn't have anything to do with race, racial profiling. This has to do with identifying people that have outstanding warrants that are already in our jails.
I wanted to ask you about this compromise, because this bill really went down to the last weekend, right?
It did.
And so I'm wondering, why is that when Republicans generally agreed on this anyway? What was going on as far as what was the bone of contention that held this bill up?
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of different factors that go into how legislation gets made. We had the approach that we wanted to take. The Senate had the approach that it wanted to take. Many bills, we end up with a compromise. And at the end of the day, and my take on this, as an attorney, I draft documents in my private practice and agreements and contracts and so forth. I gave up pride of ownership and draftsmanship a long time ago, as long as we get to the same place. And so the House version was different than the Senate version in that respect, but we all ended up at the same place. The same place was all sheriffs. We wanted universal coverage, and the Senate agreed to do that. That wasn't in their bill. In their bill, it was only counties over 100,000. So we wanted universal coverage. That's what President Trump and the federal government wanted, and that's what we think we needed. So we dug in on that. They agreed to that. We agreed to their language. But at the end of the day, all sheriffs are required to apply to one or more, and they get to do the one or more that they choose to do so. Regardless of how it's drafted or worded, that's the end result. So I'm okay with that as long as we have the same end result.
And I did want to ask you about Senate Bill 4 from 2023, because you and I have
Yes.
talked about it before.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, what is the latest as far as the status? Because obviously that bill, talk to us, remind us what that bill
Right.
was about, because you were part of that.
Right. And I carried that in the House as well. And that was to allow the state of Texas to secure our borders, to identify people and have a criminal charge of illegal entry or illegal reentry or violation of an order to return. And if someone was identified as crossing illegal, if we knew and could prove exactly when they crossed within a 2-year time period, because there's a limitation period, when they crossed, how they crossed, who they crossed with, those type things, and they could prove that beyond a reasonable doubt, there's a process by which they can be ordered to return. So that bill has been in the court system. It's been in the Fifth Circuit, went to the Supreme Court, then came back to the Fifth Circuit. The Fifth Circuit is looking at temporary enforcement of that bill. And so in the meantime, it was set for a trial on the merits in federal court in Austin on July the 8th. Since President Trump took office and the DOJ was a party and was adverse to Texas, the DOJ has now non-suited their claims in the case. So there are a couple other parties on the other side of Texas still fighting this. We were supposed to have a trial July the 8th, and I was even going to help and participate in that. But I've been notified that that has been canceled. But I've also heard that I maybe expect that the Fifth Circuit may rule on the temporary enforcement of SB 4 in the very near future.
Because it's been over a year, really.
It's been
right?
a while. It's been a while.
And so you're saying that the trial in the district court was canceled?
It was postponed. It was supposed to take place on July the 8th. But sometimes when you have different party alignments, just as a matter of practice and trying cases, if you have people substitute in or get out, you've got new lawyers, you've got a change in that process. It's not uncommon in any court case. Certainly, it even applies to the ones that I'm handling now, that there might be a delay in giving people a chance to ramp up and prepare for trial. So that's not uncommon. I expected that to happen. It has happened. I don't know when it would be rescheduled. I haven't heard, but it was going to go in July. Now it's not. But in the meantime, the Fifth Circuit may in fact rule for the temporary enforcement of it.
State Representative David Spiller of Jacksboro, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You bet.